Hello, I'm Clark Farley.
And I'm Denise Fazaro, and we are coming to you live from the Westerly, Rhode Island office of Randall Realtors Compass.
Every Wednesday, except when it's a Tuesday, we're here at 5:30. And what we're doing, the platform sends this out live to Facebook. It also goes out to YouTube. So hopefully you'll watch from one of those two. Otherwise, you won't see or hear me. Our topic of these 20-minute briefings are always about real estate for buyers and sellers. Sometimes we do from the perspective of both. Tonight's going to be one of those nights.
That's right.
A little bit of that.
Yeah.
The goal of all of this thing is to help you become a better buyer and a savvy seller.
And this week on the 20-minute real estate briefing, we're going to talk about selling or buying multifamily properties. This week we discuss selling to buyers who are considering owner-occupied multifamilies. Investment buyers and sellers will be another show.
If it seems like I'm stumbling over my words, the fact of the matter is we've changed up that beginning. And when you do that after doing it for 6 months, as we have, you have a tendency to trip over words that aren't there. So what we'll be talking about, as Denise just said, it will be the multifamily real estate from that perspective. Denise tends to be really strong with sellers. So she did part of this, what we'll be talking about, from the perspective of, hey, Mr. Seller, you got yourself a 2 or 3 family house. Here's what we're going to suggest will help.
Yes.
You're going to do that?
I am.
Okay. And then afterwards, when I'm done interrupting what she's saying, I'll be talking about it from the perspective of
buyers.
That was tripping over a word that wasn't there. Mm-hmm. The perspective of buyers and all. So enough of the comedy. Let's get to the real estate.
So typically we are seeing a few owner-occupied buyers. We typically don't see as many owner-occupied buyers as we do investment buyers in multifamily homes with 3 or more units. 2-family homes, duplexes, we typically, it's kind of 50-50. We do see more owner-occupied.
Yeah.
But in the current market, buyers are considering multifamily purchases for different reasons. The availability of a home is one. So why owner-occupied may be the best buyer for you today as a seller is they are looking for a home and they're considering multifamilies due to current low inventory. The rent from other units, especially if it's only a 2-family, will help them pay a mortgage because, as you know, if you are a seller of a multifamily home, if you had a mortgage, your interest rates are a little bit higher and you may have to put a little bit more money down. So they are counting on the income from the other unit or units to help them pay the mortgage. Also, we're seeing multi-generational purchases. People are buying homes. And since COVID and everything that has hit, it's a good idea that grandma or grandpa is living in the other side, or maybe your kids, adult children are home from college. And so you're giving them a place to live. And, rents are tough now too. So it's hard to find a rental. So if you are moving into a multifamily and you have adults, children that aren't ready to buy, but can be in a rental, then, you get the other half. The value for owner occupied is not based on potential rental income alone. They have other needs, and that's why they're buying a multifamily, other than just where a investor is just looking at the rental income.
Yeah, and since you're talking from that perspective of sellers of owners who would be sellers of multifamilies in South County, aka Washington County, I did some stats. Big surprise there. And right now, we use the same standards as we do for single families, under $500,000. And if you want to go to Block Island, you get your own stats. So right now, currently on the market in the MLS of 2 to 4 units, there are 14 listings, which is kind of on the low end, except for this current market that I promised Denise I wouldn't talk too much about.
What's the median price for those?
The median price of those are $399,000.
So basically, what that tells me is that for $399,000, where I believe our median price for a single family home was close to $5
Yeah.
So if your median price for a multifamily home is $399 and you can afford the financing of that, then the possibility of buying a multifamily and, renting out part of it or having a family member live in the other part of it it seems like a cost effective solution.
And then back from the seller's perspective, that kind of says that if you're trying to make that decision to put it on the market, this is a good time because relative to the market in normal times, that number of 14 for all of South County is pretty low.
Mhm.
Low means less competition. For something properly priced, this would be a good time to put that multi on the market. And then we could, if we had 3 20-minute briefings all tonight, we could be talking about the different areas that you would sell a multi in, meaning in South County. That means mostly centered around South Kingston, the college, down here in Westerly, and not so much in the rural Richmond.
Though there are a lot of people
Hopkinton.
right now that want to be in the Charleston, Richmond, and Hopkinton area
Yeah.
because of the school system.
Yeah, yeah.
So even though there's not as many actually there's quite a few duplexes, I think, in those kind of situations. But again, at that price point at $399, it is more affordable for many people. So so that's how many are currently on the market. What do we have in pending this week?
I'm still counting actives.
I'm sorry.
So that's okay.
You just said how many actives there
My
were.
lips
14.
are moving when I'm counting too.
Oh.
I've got 4 3 families, 1 4, and the rest are duplexes.
Yeah. So a duplex is a good way to go if you're a buyer right now. If as long as you can get the financing.
Or if you're a seller, you're picking up another one to add to your portfolio.
Yes.
Because
rents are high. So it's
damn. We should have
make a
made
lot
that
of
a
money.
bullet point.
Yeah.
Because as a seller, well, sellers though, that's a whole.
That's a whole.
That's 6 or
investment
7
thing.
20-minute briefings. No, with this whole moratorium and stuff. So
Okay.
we'll avoid the topic we haven't prepared for,
Mhm.
or at least completely prepared for, and go for something.
So what are the pendings right now?
Pendings are 20.
20 pendings. So there's about a month worth of activity on inventory on the market if that goes to show.
And then the solds give us a
Now you did the solds in the last
180 days is kind of typical in regular CMAs, which if you're a seller, we would come to your house if you call us tonight, and we'll have our thing on the bottom there. And we'll be dealing in terms of when establishing value a CMA. And by practice, it tends to be on 180 days unless you're in an area where there aren't a lot of comps. So this, for the last 180 days, 6 months, the 44 souls with a median, which Denise likes more than anything, the median sold price is $334,000, and the average is
So we're still
$343,000.
down there. We're still down there in the 300s, which does say a lot for if you can get the financing for a multifamily house, you actually have an income producing property. So for a buyer, it's a great thing.
Yeah, for the buyers.
So as a seller, how do you best prepare your multifamily for an owner occupied, which is very different than if you're selling it to an investor. So I think the most important thing is maintenance. Maintenance is key for any property being sold. Deferred maintenance will not only lower your selling price, it often will scare away a potential owner-occupied buyer, especially as Clark pointed out earlier, many of the multifamily homes in towns in South County are older homes. They've been around for a while. Maybe they're in a mill town or some type of area where there was a lot of rentals. So if you have deferred maintenance on your property, you really do need to take a look at it and make it more, a little bit more well cared for so that your buyers will be interested and can be interested.
And this is where very often the point doubles up for sellers and buyers, which is for the buyers, you want to be thinking appraiser ready. Because depending on the type of financing somebody comes in with, peeling paint can be death on a house. And
yes.
So those kinds of features will be something for a seller to watch for, and we'll be talking about buyers what to be concerned about when they go looking at
Right.
multi.
Any seller should know what the problems are in financings, and a good agent is going to tell you those so that you can have the house in good condition. Also important around here, the legal definition of your property. Is your property legally a multifamily?
Yeah.
Or did you add an apartment or an in-law? So if you have a house that you put an in-law apartment in, you didn't pull permits for it, but you've been renting it out, you're getting away with something. You are. And to sell it as a multifamily home, as a realtor, if that town has you listed as a single family, we cannot sell it as a multifamily home.
Interesting third-party story, actually personal experience down in town in Westerly we're talking about. I had a house, buyers interested in the house, and it was like a modern raised ranch converted into a two-family. Okay. So they were looking at it for the reasons we're talking about. And we took the next step of due diligence, and we looked to the field card, and the field card said two-family. Okay. And most of us would tend to stop there, but being a little bit of paranoia, I talked to an local attorney, and he had called the town, and no, there's something at least in Westerly, what's that called? Certificate of resident
occupancy.
Certificate, yeah, certificate of use, which is the final and last totally certain definition of a property. Didn't have it. We went away from that. We didn't.
Well, I had a similar problem down at the beach years ago with a house that I had under contract. Hurricane Sandy came.
Oh,
and
yeah.
all of a sudden, my three-family house was actually only a two-family house, and my 5-bedroom house was actually only a 3-bedroom house.
Oh.
And so we had it under contract. It was going to close 1 week after Sandy. And because of Sandy, not only did we lose that sale, but we also had to redefine what the house was, and we had to eliminate one of the floors as a apartment. There was only a two-family house. So having the legal definition is really important when you're going to sell. When the lawyers go look at the deeds and go look at this stuff, you don't want it falling apart when you're at the closing table.
You totally don't want, and we'll be talking about, who your team should be when you decide, okay, Clark, Denise, we're going to list the property. You want that expert team as much as buyers do. And in this case, especially because, single family is easy. Mm-hmm. Chances are it's going to be legally a single family. But when you get into multis, it can be sort of a ball of ropes.
And sometimes, you have to really do your due diligence to find out what you're selling. The other thing that owner-occupieds or even an investor wants to know, are your units occupied? Do you have leases? Are you on a month-to-month? This is a tough one because it depends on what a buyer is looking for as to whether or not all of this is good or not. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a 4-family house, an investor's buying it, you've got leases that are relatively new, so that means you're getting a good market value rent, then great, they're happy to buy your leases. But if you have a multifamily house where you've had the same renters in there for 10 years and you haven't raised their rent, your sellers are going to look at that and say, these numbers don't work for me. And if you have a lease with those people, then they're probably not going to want to buy until those leases run out. But if you're on a month-to-month, then they have the option of either asking for the occupants to be moved before closing, or they can assume those occupants for 30 days, and then they can raise the rent or ask them to move or whatever they decide at that point because they own it. So it just depends on what your buyer is looking for. In the owner-occupied situation, obviously they would like to have at least one of the units vacant.
Well, they have to. Financing.
If they're going to, right, because if you're owner occupied, you have to, but I think there's a time limit where you have to move in. Mm-hmm. So if you had to do repairs or somebody has to leave, you can do that. But in most cases, in an owner occupied situation, they're going to want to have one unit available. So if you're selling a multifamily, a 2-family, that's kind of easy as long as one of them's available. and you work out the other one. But in a 3 or 4 family house, it really just depends on the buyer. There's no easy answer with that.
Hmm. And okay. Speaking of uneasy answers, we'll go to my section, which is the
Mhm.
buyer's thing.
Yeah,
And I've already alluded to it, but
50.
how much time? Oh, by the way, stay towards the end because the last 5 minutes we'll be talking about how you can
And
reach
we
us
are
and
into the last
contact us.
5 minutes.
No, 15 minutes. Holy smoke.
Yes.
Oh, no, so now we're going to do some buyer stuff, right?
Well, you got time. You're
If
going
I
to go
talk
over a little
fast?
bit. Yeah.
Oh, no. Everybody knows I hate to go over. So most of what Denise is talking about is from the perspective of the seller, things to look out for. From the buyer's perspective, I go right back to our basic principles, 20-minute briefing of getting an expert team even before you go look at a house. And it's worth it. First person on that team is the lender, because the lender is of course everything to finance property, but with multifamilies it gets even a little more squirrely.
Yeah.
So you want to addition.
And even before you get a real estate agent, the real estate agent needs to know what you're qualified to buy. So obviously, lender is important. for
Unless
that
we
reason.
recommend somebody, because
Right, we can do
you
that
know,
too.
if you're a buyer out there, I traditionally always say go to somebody you do business with already, or let your agent recommend people.
Mhm.
Stay away from anybody on the internet or the television. I don't
Right.
even think they call it television anymore, do they?
All right.
All right. Avoid those guys, because you want somebody with an investment in it. But they're going to be the ones to lay out the process for you and explain that whole business of income against qualification. And the big part of, in more traditional times, people will look at, they're getting this much for a single family, but if we go with a duplex or maybe a 3-family, we've got that income that allows us to afford more. I always used to say, okay, sure, as long as you're prepared to take on a part-time job. Because when you buy a multifamily, you become a landlord, and the landlord has certain responsibilities.
Mhm.
And the kind of buyer we're talking about, first-time buyers, usually doesn't include hiring a management firm.
Right.
The other thing that we find in South County, Denise also touched on, is that form will follow function in the economic sense. So you'll see Milltowns, you'll see Westerly, Wakefield, older homes. Keep that in mind when you're looking. Keep that in mind when you talk to, and I'm recommending in the script anyway, that they talk to some inspectors. This is all in the
Yeah, so if you're looking in a
team.
specific town, like say Westerly or South Kingston or wherever, you may talk to an inspector that's done some inspections in that town and ask them what kind of things you want to look for.
Look, a question. Hey, Rob.
Oh, we have a question.
Yeah, Rob is asking a question.
Is there a law on how much you can raise the rent once you purchase a new home for existing tenants? Oh, I don't think there is.
But not being attorneys, will always say the same thing, which is consult an attorney on a question like that. But in my experience, and maybe in yours, is pretty much what they're willing to pay. So if you have a tenant and can raise the rent during.
Well, it depends on if you have a lease or not. If you buy a house that has a lease in place, you have to honor the lease.
Right.
But if you buy a house that is on a month to month, you can give them a 30-day notice of a rent increase. I typically, when I have sold a few of them that are a month to month, the owners want to get more money because the people probably have been paying there for a while. And what they typically do is they do it in tiers of how much they're raising it, because
to get back to market.
To get back to market value. Because if the person has shown themselves to be a good tenant, if the place is clean when they look at it, if they've been willing to show it, they show themselves to be a good tenant, they'll do it in a tiered, over time, they'll raise the rent to get it up to market.
And I've heard that from landlords, is that a good tenant is worth X number of dollars a month.
Yeah.
Just from the wear
but
and tear.
I don't know of any law. That would be something to ask an attorney. But to my knowledge and my experience, I have had landlords raise rents when it's a 30-day notice, and the people either leave or they pay it.
Thank you for your question, Rob. We will put that in our bin of questions asked for the final drawing at the end of the series. which I haven't told
You
Denise
just
about
told
yet.
me about this one.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Well, we'll do that. But thank you
Yeah.
for the question.
So we are going a little bit over. Is there something else you wanted
Mm-hmm.
to add for buyers here?
No, it's the expert team. Make sure that you talk to people who will explain what you need to know. That didn't make any sense, but it's doable as long as you're prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And in speaking of talking to teams, Clark and I are a team.
kind of.
No, we are real estate agents that are willing to help you find a multifamily or a single family to buy or to sell. As you know, the market is quite good right now for both. So if you watch our commercials, you know that because we give all the stats on the current market. So we do our commercials on Monday. We don't really have a time frame for that, but you can watch them and see them on YouTube and Facebook along with all of our shows. So please check them out. We're going to ask you to subscribe because we always do, and
should.
follow
They
us
should.
on
They should
Facebook.
subscribe.
Of course they should. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. What do we do on Instagram, Clark? Because you do it.
Oh, yes. I know this one. It's a where in South County are we? And we're starting to get a growing response from that. It has a certain locality built into it, but we put up pictures of places in South County and challenge you to remember where you saw it last.
That's right. So please share and tell your friends about us. Share this on your Facebook wall, or I don't think you can share on YouTube. I'm not sure. But if you can share it on your Facebook wall so other people know about us, especially if you have someone who's looking to sell or buy a house. All right.
Have them give us a call. The number is at the bottom of your screen there.
And we will see you next Wednesday at 5:30.
Goodbye. Oops. I got to push the end button. Don't talk.